Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain. Your call is very important to us. Please hold for the next available representative.
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain.
Can you tell me who's in charge there of the editorial
Who's in charge of the editorial?
section?
That would be Steve Henson.
Steve Henson. Is there anybody above him as well?
Somebody in Texas by now, I imagine.
In Texas, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, could I have a number for there, or can I?
You have this mayoral's race, the first time you've ever had a postmodern mayoral race in our lifetimes. In the 50s, you had a mayor, you had a strong mayor, about 21 strong mayors in the very beginning, but for about 60 years, it's been run by a city manager. So this is going to be the first mayor in our lifetimes, the first postmodern mayor. The person, there's 16 people running for mayor of Pueblo City, including Janet Wilson. Janet Wilson recently had called the Chieftain, the lone daily newspaper, who just got sold to a different corporation, on their biased fake news. Now, there's one thing that Lori Winter and Janet Wilson have in common. They're women. That's about it. So this was a fascinating conversation, okay? Here's a small portion, and let's see what we can glean from it. Now, I can't stand this part where when I call an organization up, I want a professional person to answer. Right from the get-go, Janet Wilson says, "Who am I speaking with?" And the lady on the phone says, "Pueblo Chieftain." "Oh, you're the entire corporation, huh? You're the entire corporation, the entire organization. Are you the stockholders too? Are you the oxygen and the air that we breathe?" To sit there and say that she's the Pueblo Chieftain. No, she's not the Pueblo Chieftain. She's hiding behind the corporation so she doesn't have to be accountable. She answers the phone. She tells you a bunch of fucking lies, and you just have to believe it, and you have to walk away.
Your call is very important to us. Please hold for the next available representative.
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain.
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain.
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain.
So the reason, why would a person, if I'm running a business, let's just say I'm running a convenience store, and you answer the phone, this is how you answer the phone. "Hello, this is Jonathan. How may I help you?" That way, you're talking to a person, a friendly person, and if you have an issue, you could go to somebody else and say, "Well, Jonathan said this and this." After Janet Wilson calls this person and hangs up, who the fuck did she talk to?
September 17th.
Thanks for calling the Pueblo Chieftain.
Hi, Steve Henson's not there. He's not going to be back until Monday, I think. Is Peter Roper there by any chance?
I'll transfer you over to him. Hang on just a second, please.
Yes, sir.
Hi, is this Peter?
Yes.
Peter, it's Janet Wilson calling.
Hey, Janet.
Hi, I'm a little concerned in the article that was in the paper today because, first of all, the information wasn't correct.
What's wrong with it?
Well, there was no $70,000 lawsuit. It was 30, of which I got 19.
Well, I thought Matt Miller sent me a statement that it was a $70,000 settlement.
No, it was 30.
Okay, correct it. I'll be happy to correct it.
But I wonder.
You needed to do, and even if it meant colliding with the police chief.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much what I thought. I did think it needed to be done because they had put restrictions on our parade over here that they hadn't put on any parade in 10 years.
No, I understand, ma'am. And just as I pointed out that Mr. Nickelwood did back the smoking ban and that other, I was trying to put some context to who you folks are. You're not a newcomer to city politics. You've been involved with city politics for the last few years, most notably, and to my way of thinking, taking on Chief Velez.
Me when
I didn't say you sued the city. I just said that you went ahead with your parade, and when they cited you for it, you eventually got a settlement from them.
So has the chieftain covered the fact that Nick Radazar was under investigation for some wrongful doing with the public trustee's office, or maybe some things that just weren't quite kosher? Is that covered?
No, but we covered it when he was public trustee.
Okay.
There's only so much space, Jen.
I know.
The sound in the English language is to hear your own name. Now, if you're used to hiding behind people and never being accountable to anything you say or anything that you do, well, this totally makes sense to you. But if I'm running a company and the first question that a customer had just asked my shift manager is, who am I speaking with? And she says that it's UDF or the company's name. No, your name is, Janet Wilson. Your name is Mark Roberts. That is your name. So straight from the get-go, the people of the Chieftain are liars. Who are you? You're not the Pueblo Chieftain. That's not your name. Yeah, you're a representative, but Janet Wilson asked, who were you? So automatically you're starting this entire conversation on a lie. And she thinks she's so smart. She didn't say who she was. She didn't say her name. She's so smart. But since she's a liar, why the fuck would I trust any other fucking thing that she says after this? You've already lied. You've already lied to begin.
Your call is very important to us. Please hold for the next available representative.
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain?
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo Chieftain?
Sorry, who am I speaking with?
Pueblo
By
Chieftain?
lying, and now she's sitting there saying there's headquarters in New York, and then there's these people in Texas. So who is actually running the damn Pueblo Chieftain, right? Clearly not this lady, not this woman. She's got no say-so or power, but she seems to know every goddamn thing that there is. Whoever the hell this woman is, Miss Pueblo Chieftain, the main face of the... Immediately she says Steve Henson's name, right? Because you got to... somebody's got to be accountable. Who the hell's putting all these words out here? Who the hell's publishing the damn paper? Does the Pueblo Chieftain publish itself? Oh, hey, who runs the Pueblo Chieftain? The Pueblo Chieftain does. That's what she said. Her name was Pueblo Chieftain. No, that's her name. What's your name? McDonald's. Oh, okay. Long John Silvers? Well, hello, Long John Silvers. How you doing? Walmart. Oh, okay. Good job, Walmart. So that's interesting that it's a bunch of New York City slickers, and then they have a Texas face. That's who runs the Chief. Was a fascinating conversation between Janet Wilson and eventually it's going to be Peter Roper. And Peter Roper admits several things. I'll give Peter Roper some credit. He did take the conversation and he did have a hard conversation with her, and then they, parted peacefully. But Peter Roper admits several things. This is a very important conversation. Okay, it reminds me of when Charlotte Perez had called Steve Henson, wanted him to correct the story or add new information to it. Only it was a little bit better because they both stayed cordial. And then, we learned a lot of things. So the first thing is the new owners of the Pueblo Chieftain, the lone daily of the Chieftain, who gets to declare, who controls the narrative, the daily narrative of an entire city, 107,000 people. The headquarters is in New York City. And then they got some office out of Texas. But none of them are local. They're all... Pueblo Chieftain isn't a person. It's a corporation, right? Run by ghost people who don't even have names. They are run by a bunch of New York Cityans and a bunch of Texans. It's not being run by the Colorado, not the top executive. So what the fuck do the people of Texas and the people of New York City want with Pueblo City? You should ask yourselves these questions. So we learned that. Peter Roper admits several things. He says that the Chieftain is a private business. So they can write whatever the fuck they want to write. They're owned by a bunch of New Yorkers. Fuck you, Pueblo. You don't like what the Chieftain says? You ain't gonna say shit. Shut the fuck up. Do as the fucking Chieftain says, okay? They tell you to vote for this or that. Just do as they say. They're the lone daily. The New Yorkers don't want you to stand up for the homeless or stand up for the poverty or stand up for recycling. They don't actually give a shit if your city's being run. In fact, the more dangerous and crazy and violent the city gets, the better the paper circulation will be. They don't Pueblo Chieftain, they can write whatever the fuck they want to write, whether it's fair or not. They can pick their candidate, ignore everybody else. They can be for the public's interest or they can be for the stockholders' interest. They're there to make money. If it bleeds, it leads. If it's gory, it's a story. But if it's a good story that very few people, it's a good human interest story, they won't give a shit about that. Second, Peter Roper admits he cannot be fair because he only has a column, so all 16 candidates can't get a paragraph. And since we don't get the actual instant runoff voting, we got the Kyrgyzstan cutthroat 2-round election. Only 2 people out of 16 are going to make it. 14 heads are going to roll. I thought it was going to be 20 to 30 heads on election day, but apparently some people can't get their signatures in, and I still believe if you can't get 100 signatures, you had no right to be mayor. If you can't get 100 people to sign a petition to say that you should be mayor, how the fuck are you going to be mayor? You got to actually listen to the damn people. I'm sure everybody wants to be a tyrant, But if you Wilson said that the settlement wasn't $70,000, it was down to $30,000. So Peter Roper had some information, and he went ahead and printed it. He found some paper that said it was a $70,000 settlement. So who the fuck is saying $70,000? That's a lie. Peter Roper should report on that lie, because now he's got to change it, right? It looks like Janet Wilson made 70 grand. No, she only made 30 grand. Well, that's a lot different now, isn't it? When you're poor, when you're a big corporation, right? That's just a million versus 70,000. What's the difference? So 30,000 is the truth, but not the bullshit. So Peter Roper said he was going to fix that, but he ran with a lie. He ran with a lie about Mark Ayla running for city council. He said it was the wrong race. Peter Roper also has been calling this the first mayor ever. This is the first postmodern mayor, the first mayor of our lifetimes, not the first mayor ever. This isn't the first mayor ever, you stupid dumb fuck. You don't understand Pueblo City? You don't know Pueblo City history? Why the fuck are you writing a bunch of stories about Pueblo City if you don't even know Pueblo? We are in the postmodern era ever since the internet revolution. The internet is a revolution. The internet's a revolution, and it's 8 billion times bigger than the Gutenberg printing press revolution. This is the Gutenberg printing press revolution times 8 million. So Pueblo City hasn't had a mayor since the 1950s. We had strong mayor in the early 1900s and late 1800s, but Pueblo City has had over 20 strong mayors, including the corrupt B.B. Brown, who had over 200 indictments leveled against him. Over 20, my bad, not 200, over 20 mayors. Over 20 mayors. How are you going to say it's the first fucking mayor when it's the 50th mayor or the 22nd mayor, depending, it was a ceremonial position, but there's been 21 strong mayors. That's like saying, well, you came in 22nd place. Well, you're first. Well, wait a second. Am I in 22nd or am I first place? You're the first mayor, Mr. 20. Roper also suggested that Nick Gradisar may have tried to intimidate the other candidates with his financial report. I don't think so. I think maybe he's, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. You hope for the worst, but you expect the worst, but you hope for the best. So there's two ways, right? So Nick Gradisar raises $20,000. He submits that information to the paper. They always report the money. They report everybody's money. It's the only thing the paper ever thinks is relevant is the money. That's all they care about. If you have a shit ton of money, then you're going to win. If you have no money, then you don't get a goddamn voice. So that's why, Gradisar gave it to him. But Peter Roper had suggested maybe it was to intimidate the other candidates. Look, I got $20,000. I'm getting all this money. I think it's good to tell the public that information, and maybe he is doing it to intimidate the other candidates. But Peter Roper had suggested that. Maybe that's the reason why he did it. So Peter Roper isn't a Gradisar stooge. Thing that we learned from Peter Roper, who is the main political reporter. He's been the reporter the entire time there. He basically monopolizes the reporting, and he's a piece of shit. He has no principles. He doesn't stand up for jack shit. He's a corporatist. If it bleeds, it leads. If it's gory, it's a story. And Peter Roper is just a muckraker. He'll write about anything and everything that they'll publish. So the paper's logic behind how they write about political candidates, a writer may write about them, but you can't depend on Peter. You can't depend on the columnist to actually put all the news that's fit to print. When they asked about Peter Clark, so you had Janet Wilson said, well, what about, or not Peter, Gary Clark. What about Gary Clark, who is running? He's been paying. He's got his dues. He's got 100 signatures. And Peter Roper says, well, some people just don't have anything to say. Gary Clark does have something to say. Gary Clark has a lot of great things to say. He says leadership, you either lead with everybody or you just go so far in front of everybody that everybody has to catch up.
And to me, what comes to mind with Nick Gradisar is the fact he's the guy who brought the mayor plan to the city.
Right, but is he the best person?
He's the guy who brought it, and now he's running for it.
Right, but does that make him the most qualified because he has the most money?
I didn't say he's the most qualified.
But when you...
But he has money, and he didn't even have... You can judge the meaning of the money however you want to. I thought it was significant that without even any requirement, he decides to show off all this money that he's got. Why? I don't know. There's lots of ways. There's lots of reasons for it. Maybe he wants to intimidate people. Maybe he wants to show. I don't know. Newsworthy, and you can do whatever you want. But you're welcome to advertise with it. Put whatever you want in the paper. That's
Well, if I had Nick Gradizar's money, I would probably do that. But since I'm building some houses for youth over here, I don't have...
Well, that's fine, but that's a choice. That's a choice you make.
I'm just saying...
On how you represent yourself as a candidate.
But wouldn't it be
if
nice...
All you're going to do is if all you're going to do is rely on me, then you're probably going to be unhappy because there's only so much space with 16 candidates.
A lot of people are upset about this, and it doesn't shed a good light on the chieftain because it looks really biased. You know, where was Gary Clark? He wasn't even mentioned. And I know you guys are interviewing and deciding who's worthy of an interview.
Janet, there's only so much space, and not every candidate had something to say.
Well, this was when you referenced.
It's not my job to give everybody a paragraph. I've only got so much space.
Okay.
I'm putting in the comments that I think that are most germane to readers.
So when
and in your case, I'll correct it. But not everybody has something to say, and if they don't get in.
Okay, so
Pueblo
this
Chieftain is a private business. They can do whatever the fuck they want. They're a corporation. They got stockholders. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make a shit ton of fucking money off the backs of the stories of the people of Pueblo. They're a private business. They can refuse service to anybody. They can write about you. They can write about them. They can ignore a big old explosion right in the middle of town. They don't have to print anything that's relevant. They don't have to tell the people what they need to know. They very much can keep all those important information, pieces out of the public view, so that way the rulers can continue to run shit. And then, again, like I said, chaos and pandemonium and destruction is good for the paper. It's good for the corporation because they get the pictures and they get to, show all the violence and all the bloodshed. But when it actually comes to get coverage, the way Janet Wilson has to get coverage is she's got to buy some advertisements. Now, he had mentioned something interesting, which I never thought about. You got total freedom with advertisements. Total freedom to just say whatever. Peter Roper is sitting there saying, don't depend on Peter Roper to get your, message out there. Peter Roper is going to talk about there's 16 candidates. He's going to make his pick. It's going to be Gradizar, Lori Winter, and that's it. Those are the only two people that Peter Roper is going to give a shit about, and he's going to shit on everybody else or ignore everybody else or minimize them or point out the worst things about them. And that's what Janet Wilson was talking about. I actually think that the Cinco de Mayo parade was a great thing for Janet Wilson. I could just see the people and the revolution just get bigger and bigger, and then this thing just grows out of hand because they weren't going to let her march. In America, we have a right to speak. In America, we have a right to march. I have a right to march without a goddamn petition. I don't need your fucking permission to go down the goddamn street. I'm allowed to walk down the street whenever the fuck I feel like it. So this big Cinco de Mayo parade, right? The Cinco de Mayo, also she's not a racist. She wants to have a parade for the Cinco, so she's not for discrimination. She believes in the people. To think that she, he said it so many times that it's starting to look like it's disparaging. It's not disparaging to stand up for what is right. It's not disparaging to stand up for the truth and to stand up for the people, to stand up for freedom. There's nothing. These are great things. These are good things. So I hope it doesn't shake Janet Wilson's radicalness. She understands the situation around here, how corrupt it is, and even the paper, even the Pueblo Chieftain. So what he had said, if she wanted coverage, then she's got complete freedom with the advertisement department. But that's not true either, right? It's a private business, so not only do the columnists can, ignore, but if Janet Wilson started running a bunch of advertisements where people were actually reading and she started gaining traction, then they wouldn't publish those either. They're a private business. They don't have to accept your advertisements. They don't have to write about you whatsoever. They're a private business. They're a McDonald's. You go to McDonald's and say, how come you didn't write about these good stories about our city? Why would you? Interesting that Peter Roper suggested had floated that maybe Gradizar is trying to intimidate all the other candidates. Peter Roper had said, he didn't suggest this, he said this declaratively, that Gary Clark has nothing to say to anybody. And some people don't have nothing to say. Gary Clark has a lot to say. He's got opinion on every single issue. Just ask him. If you ask him about any issue, he'll give you an opinion. It might not be exciting. He just might be neutral. He might be in between, in the middle of the road. But I have found Gary Clark to be a very sober and moderate voice. And he's very nice, too. And he's also not a part of the establishment. And he's one of the few elite Sweet 16. Remember when your team makes it into the Sweet 16 in the NCAA championship? That's awesome. So everybody that's in the Sweet 16 right now, every candidate should be valued. But because we got a Kyrgyzstan cutthroat election that Dennis Flores believe that Peter Roper is trying to disparage Janet Wilson. He's saying, look at Janet Wilson. Remember that old activist lady that caused us good old boys that run this city, that has 25% childhood poverty, that has homeless rampant all across the street, no place for the homeless shitting, homeless heroin needles. It's like they want the homeless, they want to beat up the homeless and murder them, but since they can't, they keep on finding cracks to live in. Why don't you build them a goddamn house out in the middle of fucking nowhere? That would clean up the mess, wouldn't it? And it would also be compassionate. Oh, that's the problem. It's compassionate. You can't give a fuck about other people. The Cinco de Mayo parade was motherfucking badass. They were going to block them, right? The cops are going to block them on this road, so they're going to go on this road, and then it got bigger and bigger. She's taking on the police chief, who eventually stepped down, who wasn't fit. He wasn't physically fit enough, according to the Janet Wilson only got 300 votes the last time she ran. She threw her name in. She's one of the candidates. You got 16 choices. That's not many choices. And it's nonpartisan. So, if you don't know the Republican or Democratic niche, you'll have to find out who these people are actually, who they actually are. So I think it's badass. It shows that she's a radical. She believes in people power. She defends multiculturalism and defends the Cinco de Mayo. And then the Hispanic police chief was against the Cinco de Mayo. So, they try to shut it down. They try to add a bunch of provisions and shit, so they try to shut the damn thing down. No parades in Pueblo City. How come we can't have people parades in Pueblo City? So Peter Roper, I think, is disparaging her. So, but I don't think that they should run away from. I don't think she should run away from the Cinco de Mayo. So Janet Wilson, don't run away from the Cinco de Mayo parade. That is something that happened in your life, and it's a great legacy. You took on the city and you won. You won. For the 2 years that I lived in Pueblo, Peter Roper dictated and controlled the narrative. Peter Roper, he, called Pueblo the mayor, the first mayor. He doesn't know, right? What an out-of-towner idiot. Don't know what the hell's going on, but he's the main political reporter. Didn't know which race Mark Wilson was running for. Now he's the city, councilman. So it seems like when Peter Roper is wrong about you, it's a good thing. Eventually you get to become a person of power. So when it comes to Janet Wilson, we could call Janet Wilson that Pueblo house lady. We could call Janet Wilson that Canadian godmother, that rock and roller chica. We could call her the intelligent elder woman who gives a goddamn fuck about Pueblo City, the owner of the 98.5 FM radio station, the lady who gets all those interviews from all those candidates who represent Pueblo running for office, one of the few independent voices of Pueblo City, an independent journalist, Pueblo City's Canadian godmother. Did I mention?
September 17th.
Thanks for calling the Pueblo Chieftain.
Hi, Steve Henson's not there. He's not going to be back until Monday, I think. Is Peter Roper there by any chance?
I'll transfer you over to him. Hang on just a second, please.
Yes, sir.
Hi, is this Peter?
Yes.
Peter, it's Janet Wilson calling. Hi, I'm a little concerned in the article that was in the paper today because, first of all, the information wasn't correct.
What's wrong with it?
Well, there was no $70,000 lawsuit. It was 30, of which I got 19.
Oh, I thought Matt Miller sent me a statement that it was a $70,000 settlement.
No, it was 30.
Okay, correct it. I'll be happy to correct it.
But I wonder why you would put that in as, the whole article was supposed to have been the Bruce Ale House talking about entrepreneurs and our plans, of which I thought I had a good one, and it wasn't mentioned. You brought up Cinco de Mayo, which, why would you bring that up? What has that got to do with what the night was representative of? I'm not sure.
Well, when I think of you, I think of your fight with City Hall over trying to get a parade for your East Side organization, and that you persisted with going ahead with what you thought you needed to do, and even if it meant colliding with the police chief.
But it wasn't so much what I thought. I did think it needed to be done because they had put restrictions on our parade over here that they hadn't put on any parade in 10 years.
No, I understand that, and that's why you were mostly in the news a few years ago, was your willingness to take them on. Yeah.
Right, but I just think it's just so distasteful to just put that in and nothing else, and not put what I had actually talked about during that forum, which makes me wonder: is this going to be a fair election? Because from what I see, the top people that the chieftain appear to be biased toward, and that's how it appears, are getting really good representation, and then others are getting no representation or slanderous kind of representation, which is how I view that. And sure, I fought the city and won. They violated a constitutional right. That's a big thing.
Sure.
But had I had the money, I would have gone all the way to trial so that people would understand what I went through and the cost to the taxpayers of bullying me.
Well, and just as I pointed out that Mr. Nichol did back the smoking ban and that others, I was trying to put some context to who you folks are. You're not a newcomer to city politics. You've been involved with city politics for the last few years, most notably in to my way of thinking, taking on Chief Velez.
And I did. I got an ordinance change.
That's not how you see yourself. I'm sorry.
Well, it's part of what
that's the context I put you in for readers to sue that.
You don't think that's derogatory to some people? Oh, she sued the city without having all of the information? You don't think that might be a little derogatory toward me when
I didn't say you sued the city. I just said that you went ahead with your parade, and when they cited you for it, you eventually got a settlement from them.
So has the chieftain covered the fact that Nick Radazar was under investigation for some wrongful doing with the public trustee's office, or maybe some things that just weren't quite kosher? Is that covered?
No, but we covered it when he was public trustee.
Okay.
There's only so much space. There's only so much space, yeah.
I know. I just feel like I get beat up.
There's 16 candidates, and to me, what comes to mind with Nick Radisar is the fact he's the guy who brought the mayor plan to the city.
Right, but is he the best person?
He's the guy who brought it, and now he's running for it.
Right, but does that make him the most qualified because he has the most money?
I didn't say he's the most qualified.
But when
he has money, and he didn't even have. You can judge the meaning of the money however you want to. I thought it was significant that without even any requirement, he decides to show off all this money that he's got. Why? I don't know.
Well,
there's lots of reasons for it. Maybe he wants to intimidate people. Maybe he wants to show. I don't know.
Well, I think it was an intimidation.
Well,
I don't, how to say it.
And that's fine. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that he's revealing all of his money. I think that's newsworthy. And you can do whatever you want. You're welcome to advertise with it, but whatever you want in the paper.
Well, if I had Nick Radisar's money, I would probably do that. But since I'm building some houses for youth over here, I don't
that's
have.
Fine, but that's a choice you make.
I'm just saying.
On how you represent yourself as a candidate.
But wouldn't it be nice?
If all you're going to do is rely on me, then you're probably going to be unhappy because there's only so much space with 16 candidates.
Well, I'm happy with the space and having equal space. What I'm talking about is having the Cinco de Mayo just keep coming up as the only reference to me. I've done a lot more than Cinco de Mayo. And so when it's put out there in that light, it doesn't represent fair. And when it says 70 grand and it was less than half, well, we both know the correction's going to go on the... But, a lot of people are upset about this, and it doesn't shed a good light on the chieftain because it looks really biased. Where was Gary Clark? He wasn't even mentioned. And I know you guys are interviewing and deciding who's worthy of an interview.
Janet, there's only so much space, and not every candidate had something to say.
Well, this was... when you referenced...
It's not my job to give everybody a paragraph. I've only got so much space.
Okay.
I'm putting in the comments that I think that are most germane to readers.
So when...
I'll correct it, but not everybody has something to say, and if they don't get in.
Okay, so this thing that Blake's doing, Fonterey or whatever his name is, so he...
Well, that's for the editorial board.
Okay, is he covering everybody?
I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. You should have a questionnaire from me and Ryan Severance.
I did. I handed both back already. I just want to know is everybody...
Every candidate gets their questionnaire and gets their story and their profile. All 16.
Are going to go in the paper because you're the only...
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. But
all 16.
Okay, well, I just wanted to let you know that I wasn't happy.
I'll be happy to correct that that settlement figure was too high.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna write an editorial. Is it gonna go in the paper? Okay.
I can't. That's not up to me. But you're certainly welcome to send it to Blake.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
I don't run the editorial page. I can't tell you it's gonna be in the paper.
So if somebody says something derogatory toward the chieftain, would they carry it? Is my question.
Oh sure. They say that to us all the time.
Okay. Because this is an important election, and it's very, very biased in a lot of opinions of people that I've talked to. So if that's whether it's perceived or you guys don't know, that's what's happening. And so for you guys, are you under any kind of FCC rule, or are you?
No.
Okay. So you get to print whatever you want.
Right. We're a private business.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Peter.